If you have got a teenager or a young adult and they're staying in their room, they're not applying for jobs, they're not learning to drive, they're not socializing, they're not doing any of the stuff that you would be hoping for them or expecting them to do at this point in their life. And maybe they're even telling you they're fine, they're okay, they're comfortable. I want to challenge that a little bit tonight, right? A lot of what looks like comfort is actually avoidance. And what they're avoiding is discomfort. And why are they uncomfortable? Anxiety. Right? I see it over and over. In fact, I can give you, gosh, I could spend all night giving you examples of situations where a young adult is telling a parent, they're telling me that they're comfortable, they're fine, and really it's anxiety. I remember talking with this one young man, and he stayed in his room all the time. That's why the parents reached out to me. He just played video games, and he said he was learning coding, and he was watching videos, and he was doing all this stuff online, but he would never come out of his room. And he would tell his parents that he had this plan where he was going to make all this money and never have to leave his room. He wasn't applying for jobs. He wasn't interested in going to school. Whenever the parents would try to get him to leave the room or do something, anything, he would argue or he would shut down and just sleep all day. And what he told me was, I am completely comfortable in my life. Right? I have no need to do anything. I would bring up about anxiety or worry, and he'd laugh at me. He's like, I'm not worried about anything. Uh, but I could see right through that, right? Because he was avoiding. I'm going to make this point probably a couple times tonight. But if you really want to understand where anxiety plays a place in your adult child, when you start talking about the changes they need to make, right? Age appropriate changes like getting a driver's license, getting a job, cleaning up after themselves, socializing more, getting out of all that kind of stuff. When you start talking about that stuff and they resist you, right? They, why are they resisting you? Right? Why are they making excuses? Why are they pushing back? Why are they doing all this? Because that stuff makes them uncomfortable. And I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm going to go ahead. Uh, a lot of that, many times they don't even realize that that is anxiety, right? They just have that sensation of being uncomfortable, that discomfort, and they don't like feeling that way, so they avoid it. They don't take time to get the insight into, hey, maybe this is anxiety that I'm experiencing, right? And if you think about it, if they've been experiencing this since they were kids, since they were teenagers, and they never dealt with it, they'd never worked on it, and they were always able to avoid, avoidance lowers anxiety. So when the anxiety is lower, uh, or not even there, they don't feel it, they don't see it. And a lot of times they'll come to conclusions that I'm not anxious, this is just how I want to be, because they're in these patterns of, that's going to make me uncomfortable, I'm not even going to think about it, right? That feels funny, I'm not even going to do that. And they do that over and over. See, a lot of times they have very, very low awareness of the impact of anxiety and struggle and discomfort in their life. So this young man that I was talking with, when I started pushing in the conversation about doing these things and how they're very age appropriate, like getting a driver's license and getting a job and socializing and these other things, he would become more and more agitated. And then I could see underneath that agitation, worry, right? And there it was, right? This stuff really freaked him out, but he did not have the awareness because he had been avoiding for so long. And I see those kind of patterns to the extreme, and I see them on the smaller level as well. So let's just talk about anxiety in general, and and when they're avoiding, and when they don't know they're anxious. right? And we want to help them gain that insight. Um, okay, when this pattern continues, right? When they've been avoiding things and they're getting more and more stuck, and as a parent, you've tried to talk to them, you've tried to maybe reason with them, maybe you've tried to force them to do something, you've tried many things, and they are not able to move out of that stuckness, right? And it ends in arguments and shutdowns and getting cold. Um, those cycles within your child, within your adult child, eventually they even start to question themselves if they are capable, right? And the times that they've tried and they've failed, that cycle right there is like, I've tried that, it didn't work, I'm not even able to do this, right? And if that cycle happens enough, maybe you've been yelled at enough times, maybe you've tried so many times, you start to doubt, you start to question, is this even possible, right? That's something that I want to speak to because that's very ingrained. You are not alone in that thought. Many parents I talk to, by the time they're talking to me, they really are questioning, right? Is this even possible? And are we the only ones who are struggling this much? Like, where did we mess up as parents? What's wrong with our kid? But these are the kind of things they're wondering. And I want to tell you that this is very possible, right? This is very much, I've seen it over and over, where young adults have been able to move forward, and the parents have been equipped and know what to do to help their child move forward. So this is possible, and I don't want you to, as you're listening to this talk, feel like this doesn't apply to you, right? That in some way your situation is so much worse. I promise you, there are always steps forward, and that's what we want to talk about. But before we get into what to do, I want to talk about a little bit of what not to do in these situations. There are 3 patterns that parents tend to fall into, and I want you to know what those are, recognize them, and see them even when they happen within yourself, because you want to start changing those. And those are avoiding, rescuing, and forcing. So let's break those down. Avoiding is just what it sounds like, right? It's when you got that feeling you're walking on eggshells. We can't bring anything up. We can't talk about this. Let's not allow that situation to happen because it's going to blow up, or we're going to have that pattern again, and you just avoid, right? And the hope is maybe it'll work out in some way. And maybe there's a chance that things, some other factor will come in and influence it, influence your young adult, and maybe some change will happen. Even if that does happen, which is very unlikely, but even if it does, you've missed a very important relational moment there, right? And being able to connect, right? Avoidance pulls away from the relationship, right? Even if they're able to figure it out, you weren't a part of that, right? You weren't in a supportive role. You were in an avoidant role. You were in an avoidant position, which seems uncaring. Even if that's not why you did it, you love them to death, but they can see that as you just kind of left me high and dry to figure this out myself. And so avoidance, any way you look at it, does not help. The other is rescuing, right? And it's a kind of a form of avoidance, right? Rescuing is, I'm going to do this for you, or I'm going to make this go away, right? And it's taking that discomfort away, taking away that tension. I think it's pretty obvious, right? If they're not doing it, if you're doing it for them, or you're removing it from them, they're not learning. And the long term, well, the short term is relief, right? Whew, all right, we handled that situation, nothing blew up, we didn't have to deal with the meltdown, whatever it was. But the long term is they're even more stuck. Right? They didn't learn. They don't believe they can do it. They become overly reliant on you, or they become resentful that you do everything for them, or sometimes both at the same time. And it's like, please take care of me, and I hate you for taking care of me. Please do this for me, but I hate that you are doing this for me. I, if some of you just heard that and it connected, I know what you're talking about, right? Uh, they want to avoid the stress, uh, but they're robbed of confidence, of working through it themselves, of learning, of having the satisfaction of, I did that. I did something hard. I worked through it. I can do hard things. Right? They're robbed of that. So rescuing ultimately also makes things worse. The third one is forcing. Right? It's a form of control. It's pushing too hard. It's nonstop lecturing. It's ultimatums without connection. Right? It's the do it or else, or we're kicking you out, or and I'm talking about the extreme stuff, right? Without connection, without explanation. You're just forcing them to do something. And if uh, if they somehow do it because they're forced to, it's usually out of fear. It's usually out of feeling like manipulated or overly controlled. And they're going to resent you for it. And it's not going to build their confidence. Right? They're not doing that for them. They're doing it for you. And that doesn't work. Now, in reality, we tend as parents to just bounce through these three things. Right? We're avoiding, and then we jump in and we rescue, and then we avoid some more, then we rescue because we can't handle this anymore, we got to move it forward, and then we get resentful that this whole thing is happening, and now we're controlling, we're forcing, we're ticked off, we're laying the hammer down, and all of that does not help them grow. It does not help your relationship, and you're not going to get closer with those. But in reality, every parent's been in those situations. And let me make this point, okay? Because this is where it gets confusing when you're thinking about it in real life. There are times where, what do we call it? Pick your battles, right? There's times where you have the wisdom and the insight of, this isn't the time to talk about this, right? And that's usually because their anxiety is so high. It's usually because you're in the moment, right? The very thing that they're trying to avoid, or the very thing that is making everyone upset, just happened. And that's a time to say, not now. Let's step away, but we're going to come back to it. We're not avoiding it forever. We're using some wisdom, giving it some space, but we've got to come back to it. There are times where you need to do things for your kid, right? You need to help them out. You need to meet them halfway. Like, hey, I'll help you with the first step. I'll do this one for you because that's getting it going, right? But that's different than just completely removing something, rescuing them, right? They've got to climb out of the hole a little bit themselves, right? It's not just that you pull them out the whole way. It's like there's some effort there. And there's time for boundaries, right? There's times for limits. There's times for like, no, I'm not doing that. You have to do this, right? This is the deadline. This is the moment. That tough love, if you will. But when it's done with connection, when it's done with purpose, when you have been able to connect around it, that is different than just forcing. Okay, let's move on. Rather than those three extremes that we're talking about here, we want to focus on connection first, right? You start with, I love you, I care about you, and I want to understand what's going on. Why, right? Why is this so hard? It's where you spend time on the relationship. Even if you don't have a job. Even if you're not paying this, even if you're making those bad choices, I still love you. I still care about you. I don't like what you're doing, but I still love you, and I'll still spend time with you, right? If you can, in any way. And a lot of times there is a way, right? I will have at least a civil conversation with you. I will at least acknowledge your presence when you walk through the kitchen. I'll take you out for some burgers. Um, I still care about you. You are more important than the things that you have to get done and moving your life forward. That's the message they need. And then you're talking with them as you've connected about why, what's going on, why is this so hard? And remember, a lot of times your teenager, adult, or adult child does not have a high awareness to what anxiety really is, right? And that's where you have to give them some language, right? This is uncomfortable. You are feeling anxious, afraid, or maybe even this is just hard, right? Where you say, I know something is making this hard for you. Help me understand what it is, right? You seem to be really afraid about this, scared over this, because every time it's time to do it, you say you're going to do it, and then for some reason you don't. Are you scared? Are you afraid? Are you nervous? Is this anxiety? Right? What does it feel like? And connect with yourself. You don't know exactly what it is, what it's like to be your kid, right? But you know what anxiety feels like. You know what fear of failure feels like. You know what it's like to be overwhelmed and not be able to think straight. You can connect with that experience. And so maybe you share some of the times that you have felt like that, right? And have some empathy. This is hard for them. Maybe it seems like so easy. It's like everybody has a driver's license, right? You should be able to do this. Or everybody can at least flip burgers at a place or work a minimum wage job. There's millions of people that do it. It's not about the thing they're not doing. I want to make this point. I'm going to make it. It's not about the thing. It's about the experience, right? There's probably something in your life that freaks you out that is very irrational, right? Those bugs really aren't going to kill you, but you act like it every time they get around you, right? Or maybe that type of conversation or a public speaking thing or whatever it is. There's something that rationally other people can do it very easily, but for some reason it freaks you out. It really bogs you down. It hits that insecurity within you. Same thing with your kid, right? But it might be something that seems simple to you, and it's frustrating to you that they won't try. They're overwhelmed. They're anxious. Connect with that experience and help them identify those are moments they're anxious, right? That's what it feels like to be overwhelmed, and it's okay. Everyone's there. We've got to move forward. So you're not just addressing the behavior, you're trying to get to what's underneath it. Then what? Right? As you're understanding what they are struggling with, what the anxiety is about, then we've got to take small steps. And if you can imagine, and I'm going to do this really quickly, we can dig into it, but the concept's pretty simple. Think about a scale from 1 to 10, and 1 being no anxiety, very comfortable, just sitting on your couch, eating potato chips, just having an easygoing time. And 10 is full out panic attack, right? Complete shutdown panic attack. And it's 1 to 10. Right? When you're picking out steps of what to do next, if the anxiety level, the discomfort level is only like a 1 or 2, maybe a 3, it's too easy. They can do more. But if you go to the panic zone, it's a 7, 8, or 9. That's way too much, and they're going to shut down. What you want is to find a step that, you want to find a step that is going to allow them to feel some discomfort, but it's not going to be overwhelming. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. They're going to struggle. But when they achieve it, they're going to feel like they did something. That's what you want. Right? So we don't throw them into panic, but we also don't want them to stay in that comfort zone. We want them in that growth zone. And then you do the small steps. And so when you put those together, uh, you're having conversations about connecting, about understanding what's going on, empathize with them, don't shame them. Their feeling, their experience, their reasons are valid to them, right? But from there, let's talk about moving forward. Let's talk about taking the next step. And you work that together. Yes, you need to have boundaries. Yes, there's times you need to say, look, you're going to have to start paying for stuff yourself at some point, right? We're going to stop driving you around at some point. That's a reality. But it's not as much focus on the negative as it is the positive, right? At some point, you're going to be able to pay for things yourself, and that's going to feel amazing. At some point, you're going to be able to drive yourself around. That's going to be awesome. That's going to have freedom. At some point, you're going to feel comfortable making friends and socializing, and that's going to be awesome, right? So it's both of them, right? We're not going to do this forever, but you get to do it. You get to have this great experience, right? And then you believe in them. You show them that you're excited for them and you're believing in them, and it can happen, and it will happen. You just have to be patient. Little side point. At times, consider removing yourself from the equation. See, as a parent, you're many times in the safe zone, even if it doesn't feel friendly, right? You're a safe person to push back on. You're a safe person to yell at. You're a safe person to be cold to be rude to, right? In other words, they're not going to do that to somebody else, not as easily, but they're so used to doing it with you. That one young man that I was talking about took a lot of work to help him get over his anxiety of driving, which turned out to be a fear of causing an accident, but more than that, feeling like an idiot that he was going to screw up and cause an accident and not be able to drive well and be laughed at. That was a lot of the underlying fear. But every time he would sit with his parent in the car, it didn't go well, right? He got very anxious and would push back and yell and I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. And the parents were learning to handle those moments better, but it usually ended up in either yelling and then ultimately a shutdown. One of the things that worked, that this doesn't work for everyone, but it worked a lot better than I even thought it was. They came to an agreement. This is a good example. They talked about, okay, you've got to learn how to drive. But every time we try to teach you to drive, it just goes badly. They came up with the idea of having in-car driving lessons. And they do that for adults. That's actually a thing. And so the person, this driving instructor, came to their house. And what this young man was expecting is that they were going to pick him up and take him to their facility and drive around a parking lot. Maybe he'd take some class or something like that. The driving instructor just said, get in the front seat. And before this kid could think about it, he was a young adult, he's sitting in the driver's seat. And the driver's like, okay, I got a brake here and I got a hold of the wheel, let's go. And just had him start driving. And that was enough. He just, okay. And he started driving. And then it kind of hit him like, I'm driving. And thankfully the instructor was kind and friendly. And it was an amazing experience because he just like pushed through layers of anxiety and self-doubt and all of that. Big part of that was parents weren't in the equation. Right? They were very much a part of the whole process, but that particular step, it helped. I can think of another example. There was a young man who was super anxious about getting a job, interviewing, getting rejected. It was a lot about the rejection was the underlying fear that we identified. Um, the parents wanted to help him with practicing for interviews because that's what he was terrified of. It went badly every time they tried, but they had the idea. There was a trusted family friend who came over, and this kid wasn't going to be rude to this family friend. And the family friend sat down and said, "Okay, let's talk about interviews. Let's do a mock interview." And he was able to do that with somebody else and then talk with the parents about it. So bringing in some help and support is not a bad idea if you have it. Patience and persistence. I've talked about this so many times. Right? A lot of these situations, and to the extent that your child is stuck, it's going to take time. Right? It's never a straight line. Whatever it is that they are struggling to do, that they are anxious about, they're overwhelmed with, there's going to be times where they have breakthroughs, and then there's going to be times where their anxiety spikes and they're going to drop back. You've got to look at the bigger picture. You've got to have moments of, you know what, we've done something we haven't done before. We've made progress. And just because we drop back a little bit, we've done it before. We can do it again. We can keep moving forward. And ultimately, it keeps moving up. I don't know which way that is on your screen for the chart, but we're moving forward, onward and upward, right? But you got to be patient and you got to be persistent. A lot of parents ask me, got this question a couple times this week, how do we push them? How do we stay consistent without nagging? In my mind, nagging is about control. It's even about being annoying at times, as in, I'm not connected with you. Did you do it? Did you do it? What about now? Did you do it? Are you going to do it? And not giving respect, not giving space. If you don't want to come across as nagging, your message has to be consistent but grounded in care, in love. I love you. I care about you. I believe in you. I want the best for you. That's why I'm checking in. Right? I want you to have success. It's going to feel so good. That's why I'm checking in with you. Right? But also, if you're worried about nagging, why are you asking? Why are you checking in? If it's for your own anxiety, you might need to put that in check. You might be checking in too much. Right? And so if it's the feeling of, I need them to do this, or I need them to tell me that they're still going to do it so that I feel better, so I don't feel as anxious, that's your own anxiety. And that's going to come across. They're going to feel that anxiety. It's going to feel controlling. You don't want that. Right? So it's not about pressure. It's about support with expectations. So the extremes on that we want to stay away from is being nagging and controlling, or where we are avoiding. We're not coming back to the conversation. We came up with a plan. It's a good plan. We have good steps, and then we're not going to check in. You need to check in, but you check in with support. That's why you're checking in. Right? So when you're checking in to really help them hit their goals, I'm not calling that nagging. I'm calling that support. So, your goal, this is my conclusion, right? Your goal is not to help them avoid discomfort. Your goal is to help them feel supported as they move through whatever they need to do, So that means staying connected, understanding the fear, taking the small steps, and being patient and persistent. Because even if they don't believe it yet, they are capable of more than they think. They're probably capable of more than you believe they can do right now.